Hello, everyone. Welcome to another monologue on the Israel-Hamas conflict. It started following the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel. So, we're going to do in this monologue, we're going to do 5 questions that we're going to address and see what we can come up with. So, number 1, will the Israeli invasion of Gaza radicalize even more Gazans? That seems to be an opinion of some. In my opinion, I don't think that's going to happen because the Palestinian people in general, but Gazans in particular, are already quite radicalized. So you just can't go any further. So it's not like, oh, because Israel is killing so many civilians, right? So people who would have otherwise been opposed to Hamas, oh, now they're going to start sympathizing with Hamas because now Israel is hurting me as well, not just the militants, right? So that seems to be the thought among those who believe that Israel is going to radicalize people who would otherwise be sympathetic towards Israel. But that's just not the case because, again, they're already very radical. So just to be clear, what I mean by this, there is overwhelming sympathy towards resistance to Israel in general, and just militarism, fighting Israel using military force. In fact, it's no secret that Fatah is very weak right now. The Fatah party and the Palestinian Authority in general, which is dominated by Fatah, is very weak because they are seen as just weaklings. They're seen as pushovers because they're not confronting Israel. They're just resting on their laurels. They're not participating in anything. They haven't done anything for the Palestinians, right? So yeah. Anyway, bottom line is that I don't subscribe to this idea that it can get any worse than it already is. Now, I will concede that there's got to be some Palestinians/Gazans who are appalled or simply disagree with what Hamas is doing, but these are very, very few. Very, very few. And those people are not going to change their mind anyway because they already understand what's involved here and why Israel is doing what it's doing. So, yeah, it is what it is. Okay, number 2. Will the hostages be released? So Hamas is holding about 200 odd hostages. And part of the mission, the stated mission of Israel in Gaza is to find those hostages and release them. Will that be accomplished? I am very, very pessimistic on this, and I have been from day one. Why? Well, here's the thing. Okay, what does Hamas want in return for releasing those hostages? Hamas wants Israel to release its Palestinian prisoners in Israel, numbering in the many thousands. I'm talking about, I think, 7,000 plus. Now, this is very, very untenable for Israel to do for many reasons, among which is that you just cannot possibly reward such a savage and brutal attack by just rewarding them with the release of all their prisoners. This is the reward for somebody who did October 7 to you. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So rationally, this is just a complete. It's a no-brainer that Israel is not going to do that. But and by the way, that will completely undermine the Palestinian Authority, right? Because the Palestinian Authority has been trying to get those prisoners. A lot of them are just regular Palestinians; they're not Gazans, right? And the Palestinian Authority, of course, wants them released as well. And if Hamas is able to achieve through the killing of 1,200 civilians, invading Israel and killing 1,200 people, if Hamas is able to achieve what Fatah and the PA has not been able to achieve, then it'll be a complete repudiation of what Fatah and PA stand for. And so you're just going to radicalize the entire Palestinian population. And, the PA government is instantly going to fall if you do that. And it'll be overtaken by Hamas. So it's just, yeah, of course not going to happen. So Israel is not going to do that. So if Israel is not going to do that, so in other words, what Hamas is asking in return for those hostages is not something that Israel can agree to. Okay, it's like think of it as if Hamas were asking, okay, we're going to release those hostages if you dissolve the state of Israel. Of course, we're not going to do that, right? And so it's like that. It's just not going to happen. Okay, and so because that is out of the realm of practicality for Israel to release 7,000 or even anything close to that number of Palestinian prisoners, therefore, why would Hamas release the hostages? They have no reason to do so. You know, some people are saying, "Oh, for humanitarian reasons." Get out of here, humanitarian. They slaughtered children and 80-year-olds in the most brutal of manners, and you know, of course, they're not concerned about for many humanitarian reasons. So even if they cannot get what they want, they're still not going to release them, and they're still going to kill them, right? Again, the moment they think that they cannot use them for anything, the moment that they cease to be bargaining chips, they're going to be killed. Okay, and so I don't see. I have to be very pessimistic about this because I just don't see light at the end of the tunnel on this. I just don't think they're going to be released because again, what they're asking is not something that Israel can grant, and if Hamas cannot get what they want, they'll just kill the hostages anyway. They're not going to release them if they can't get what they want, right? Again, they killed the others that they encountered, right? Why? You know, it's a killing machine. So yes, I'm very pessimistic on this. You know, to me, most of those hostages are going to die. It's just a question of time if they're not dead already, because we don't know. Of course, there are videos. Hamas is forcing them to record themselves in videos, which, by the way, the master media is refusing to show. I might get to this in a moment. Why they're refusing to show these videos, but yeah. Anyway, third question: is the humanitarian toll in Gaza too high, and when is enough enough? Okay, so I've been saying this in monologues that I've done previously, and I'm going to say it again. To me, there is no number that would be too high. I cannot overemphasize this. Every single civilian, put this in quotes, I'll tell you in a moment why, but every single civilian that dies in Gaza is Hamas's fault. Why? Hamas is purposefully mingling among civilians because it figures that either Israel will be deterred because Israel does not want to kill civilians. They know that. And of course, there's a lot of pressure on Western civilizations to distinguish between combatants and civilians. So either Israel will not kill the militants because they are mingled with civilians, or Israel will kill them, right? They'll kill the militants and the civilians, and then there's going to be an outcry. Hey, Israel killed civilians. So it'll put them in bad light, and there's going to be a lot of public pressure on them to retreat and to scale back the attack, etc. So it's a win-win situation for them when they do that, when Hamas does that. When they surround themselves and operate from civilian facilities, it's a win-win for them. So they've been doing this strategically on purpose. It's not collateral killing. Okay, when Israel kills civilians, it's not merely, oh, I'm killing a militant and there's a civilian that happens to be nearby. This civilian was placed nearby on purpose in an attempt, in an effort, in an endeavor to prevent and discourage Israel from killing the militants. And by the way, this is something that was not foreseen when international conventions on warfare were originally codified and conceived. Okay, back then there was no such thing. Nobody thought that a nation would put its civilians at risk, thinking that, oh, if I put my civilians at risk of enemy gunfire, therefore the enemy's not going to attack. It's crazy. Of course the enemy's going to attack. So yeah, but that's what Hamas is doing. So every single civilian death in Gaza is Hamas's fault. That's how you got to see it, period. The bomb can be coming from Israel. It doesn't matter. It is Hamas who killed them, and it is Hamas who's at fault. And so therefore, here's how I see it. I'm a strong believer in the concentric circle theory, which is I'm responsible for myself the most, the people around me a little more, the people around those a little more, and so on and so forth. I'm a Floridian. First me, then my family, then my community, then Tampa, then Florida, then the U.S., then Western nations in general, and then the world in general. So by the time I get to the world, obviously I've exhausted all my resources and all my sympathy. That's what I'm trying to say here. What my point here is that Israel is not responsible for civilians on the enemy side more than the enemy itself. So if I'm fighting my enemy, first and foremost, it's the enemy that needs to protect its civilians. And Hamas is doing just the opposite. Exactly the opposite of that. And so again, Israel is not responsible. Hamas is morally culpable for all those deaths. And so there is no number that is too high. For Israel, as far as Israel is concerned. Of course, the crime that Hamas is doing is committing because of this. Of course, that goes up the more of their own civilians die. But as far as Israel is concerned, essentially, Gaza/Hamas is committing suicide more and more and more. So it's one suicide, it's 100 suicides, 1,000, 10,000. Every single day that Hamas goes on like this, it's more and more suicide. Keep in mind that Hamas could, if it wanted to, it could surrender and cease all the killings, all the death that is happening there. It could stop literally this instant if Hamas lays down arms. They could probably even negotiate an agreement whereby they leave the Gaza territory, and Israel would probably allow that in return for just ending all the hostilities. Just evacuate. They get ejected from Gaza. They never come back. They lay down arms, and Israel is not seeking to. Israel is seeking to eradicate Hamas. It doesn't necessarily mean that every fighter needs to be killed. So all the hostilities could cease, and they could actually save themselves by simply laying down arms, and they wouldn't even be taken prisoner. They could just leave. Iran can take them. Qatar could take them. All these countries that are sympathetic to Hamas, so that could happen. So every day that Hamas keeps fighting Israel on this is another day that Hamas is committing suicide against its own civilians. Again, the reason they're committing suicide and the reason they're responsible for their own civilians is not because they're continuing to fight. It's because they're continuing to fight strategically on purpose among their own civilians. That's the issue that I'm having here. And that's why this is so grotesque, what's happening here. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4, what could Israel have done differently? Okay, so here's a few scenarios here. Some of them are completely outlandish. They make no sense, but I'm just going to say it anyway because I'm not, I'm just a private person. I'm not a pundit. I'm not a political analyst. I'm not on national TV. So, okay, so here are the things that Israel could have done differently. Okay, so one is that Israel, I'm going to mention 2 radical ones first, 2 extremist ones, and then I'm going to go into middle of the ground. So one is Israel could have said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're fed up with Gaza. This is just an untenable situation. There's nothing that we can do to satisfy them. They could have had a state. We literally gave them sovereignty and independence in 2005. They could have just built it up. They're refusing to do so. We gave them 17 years. They refused. They continued to fight us. They continued to bomb us. And now all of this atrocities of October 7. What else can we do? Here's what we're going to do. If we leave these people here, even if we eradicate Hamas, another leadership will arise that is going to espouse the same resistance to Israel mechanisms. I say resistance to Israel. It's not resistance to Israel. It's just launching attacks on Israel, rockets, non-stop rockets. In the good days, right? In October 7, it's 100 times worse. But so Israel could say, you know what? We're not going to take this anymore. Everyone leave. Eject the entire population of Gaza. So Israel would basically lay down an ultimatum. You guys all have to leave. Where are you going to go? Go to Iran. Go to other Hamas sympathizing countries that support you. Go to Hezbollah supports you. Syria supports you. Okay, go to Syria. Go to Lebanon. Out of here. Leave. So you got to be out of here. Deadline. Okay? Give them 6 months, whatever. Israel can even pay for the ships to transport them. Um, and of course, if they're not going to leave, bomb them and kill them. Okay, of course, it's extremely radical. I'm not saying Israel should do that, but it's a crazy idea. But it's not necessarily as it's a crazy idea from a practical standpoint, but it's not necessarily something that is out of the realm of moral, the moral domain in terms of I can't deal with this anymore. You know, you got to leave because you keep attacking me. It's nothing's going to change. My life is in danger constantly. I'm not attacking you. You're attacking me, and therefore this is the only way out. So again, I'm not advocating it. There's got to be better solutions, but I'm mentioning it. Okay. The other extreme would be, and this is also very extreme, do nothing. Imagine this. Imagine if Israel responded to October 7 by doing exactly nothing. Zilch. Okay. So obviously that would embolden Hamas to a great deal, and it probably would do it again, right? But by doing nothing, I'm not necessarily, I don't mean actually nothing, because it's inevitable that Israel would take measures to revise and upgrade its procedures and its fence, its border fence, so that it doesn't happen again. So that'll happen regardless. Okay. So when I say Israel doing nothing, I mean in terms of launching an attack and punishing Hamas. So that is conceivable, very, very impractical. I mean, that would have been the equivalent of the U.S. doing nothing following 9/11, right? Because remember, October 7 is Israel's 9/11. And so, yeah, from a practical standpoint, of course, it would never happen. But it is conceivable that Israel would have said, you know what, this is a terrible, terrible, terrible loss. It was an intelligence and a defensive failure on our end. We're just going to upgrade our systems, and we're just going to be on guard all the time, every time. We're going to have strong borders, strong sensors, strong cameras, garrisons stationed all along, and it's not going to happen again. That's it. So, believe it or not, this is not as crazy as it seems. Okay. And by the way, a modification slash adaptation of this approach would have been for Israel to just launch symbolic retaliatory attacks, and not go to the extent of making it its mission to eradicate Hamas and overthrow the regime in Gaza. Just simply a few attacks here and there, just bombing a few headquarters here and there, and at the same time, mostly focusing on defensive strategies going forward. So this is also impractical, but it could have happened. And let's see about middle of the ground. What could Israel have done differently in terms of middle of the ground? Okay, so again, this is also very impractical, but I just want to mention it because the most ardent critics of Israel appear to be implying that this is what Israel should have done, namely that Israel should have had, don't throw any bombs. Okay, bombs they kill too many civilians, too much collateral damage. Instead, go in person, go house to house, street to street, bunker to bunker. Only fire if you're actually verifying 100% that you're killing only the Hamas militant that you're targeting. There's no civilians that are going to get hurt by your firing. So essentially, don't use any bombs because they're always going to be surrounded by civilians, right? So only use like gunfire, and only when you're positive that you're targeting a militant who is actually targeting you. Okay, so very, very unrealistic. I shouldn't even call it middle of the ground, but I really want to mention this specifically because it is implied by everyone who claims that they sympathize with Israel in terms of the October 7 attack, but they also believe that Israel's response is too harsh. So I asked them, what would have been a more gentle response? Is this what you envision? That Israel goes house to house with guns only, no bombs, no grenades, no nothing. Okay, no mortar, no missiles, no nothing, only guns, and only shoot at somebody who's literally holding a gun at you. This is incredibly, incredibly impractical. Remember, Hamas they're not even wearing a uniform. They're just mingled with civilians. And the only time they're going to pick up a gun is when they're already shooting at Israel. And the Israeli military forces are always in uniform, always carrying a gun, and they're always like a moving target. Here, shoot me. Right? So it's a ridiculously asymmetrical position to be in which Israel would be a million times more vulnerable than the Hamas militant. And these people are so partial in favor of Hamas that they're probably gonna claim that if Israel shoots anyone, that's probably a civilian, right? Prove it that it was a militant, right? So Israel not only would it have to conduct itself the way I just described, but it will also have to prove that every single death that they inflicted on the enemy was in fact a militant death. Maybe all Israeli soldiers are going to have to carry cameras. Okay, so when they're shooting someone, oh, it's somebody who had a gun in his hand. So yeah, that's a crazy theory. Tens of thousands of Israelis would have died in such a scheme of things. And on top of that, it may never have achieved anything because Hamas could still survive all of this. They could just simply hide and just not show up, just mingle. And the moment Israel leaves, because if Israel stays, oh, it's an occupation, right? So they have to leave, right? So the moment they leave, they just come sprouting up like mushrooms after a rain. So it will not accomplish anything anyway. Or civilians may die anyway, even if you do this. Bottom line is, it's not workable. Okay, so I mentioned a few things. The first one, admittedly, by the way, is completely crazy, but I mentioned it anyway, just to put it on the table, of alternatives in terms of Israel's response to the October 7 attack. Okay. Number 5. Will Israel achieve its mission of eradicating Hamas and returning the hostages? Because that was the stated mission of this campaign. So, again, I'm pessimistic on this one. Okay, I was pessimistic on the question of will the hostages be released? I said no, they're probably going to die in Hamas custody. And on this one, I'm also pessimistic. I don't think Israel will achieve its mission. Now, yeah, it might eradicate Hamas, possibly. But it's still not going to achieve its mission because, as I mentioned in passing earlier, the people of Gaza are overwhelmingly supportive of attacking Israel. It's not an accident that Hamas is in power. Remember, Hamas won elections in 2006, okay? And there is no reason to believe that A, these elections were not fair, and B, that the public opinion is still in favor of Hamas. And C, there's no reason to believe that the public opinion isn't overwhelmingly in favor of Hamas. Remember, anyone and everyone you interview in Hamas is going to tell you, interview in Gaza is going to tell you, hey, they support it. If you ask them, they'll tell you, yeah, we support the war. We support October 7. They cheered. They cheered in Gaza. Now, you could say, if it would be a convoluted theory to think, oh, well, all these people are just stating this because they're afraid. Maybe, but you don't know that. If you're afraid of Hamas, and then normally you wouldn't say something to piss them off, but you don't necessarily have to voice support for them either. You could just abstain. No one's going to come after you for saying nothing, right? And instead, we have thousands upon thousands of people. Virtually anyone you interview will tell you that they sympathize with Hamas. So what I'm getting at here is that even if you eradicate Hamas, right, the sentiment is still there. The people still believe in martyrdom. They still believe that that it's their mission in life. It's their life's mission, not to make their life here on earth better, but to eradicate Israel. That's what it is. It's very, very sad that that's the case, but that is the case. Again, if you do your research, look into the literature, look into the TV programs there, look into, just interview them, Talk to people. That's what they'll tell you. They're making no bones about it. They're not hiding their views on this. I mean, they believe in it. They believe that, it's their mission, it's their objective to resist Israel, to fight them, to eradicate Israel, to fight Israel. It's not a question about sovereignty. It's not a question of, I want to have my own self-rule, I want to have my own state. No, it's eliminating Israel. That's their objective. And so, yeah. So what I'm trying to say here is that Israel, how do you achieve your mission? I mean, if these people remain alive, then they're always going to harbor ill will against you, against your very existence as a state and even as a living person. Okay, and certainly against the religion too, right? What do you think, that an Arab state on the land of Israel would be sympathetic to the Jewish religion, like in the West, where we have freedom of religion? Of course not. I mean, go to Iran. Iran sponsors Hamas, right? Look at freedom of religion in Iran. Do you have freedom of religion? Do you have freedom of speech there? What do you have? Nothing. And so it's ridiculous to suppose that yeah. All right. So what I'm trying to say here is that Israel cannot achieve its mission simply by eradicating Hamas. So either it's not going to happen, or more likely, Israel will be able to eradicate, at the very least, the leadership of Hamas, but the sentiment will persist. And that's going to be a big problem. And I don't have a ready solution to this, actually, but I do have one idea, which brings me to question 6, which is, realistically speaking, what could Israel do that would actually make a difference in terms of defeating Hamas? And that brings me to the core idea that I've been invoking for some time now. I think I have another monologue on this that I have done previously, but I'm going to reiterate it here again, which is that Israel is making a big mistake, in my opinion, by emphasizing the war on terror. It's a mistake. Why is Israel, first of all, why is Israel doing it? Why do they always call the Hamas militants, they call them terrorists? Okay. The reason they're doing it is because Israel does not want to, the conventional wisdom is that you do not want to antagonize the Arab world. The Arab world, of course, is overwhelmingly Muslim. And so if you emphasize the fact that the central motive of Hamas to attack Israel is not sovereignty, it's not about sovereignty, it's not about statehood. The central motive is jihadism, namely holy war driven by a belief in the Quran, belief in Islam. It's an Islamist notion that Muslim land should always remain under Muslim control, and no one can ever take it away from you. And if they do, we need to fight them to death until you either kill the enemy or you die trying. That's jihadism. And that's the real motive of Hamas. But Israel, and scholars know this, people who are in the know and they're honest about it and impartial and objective about this, they know that that's what really motivates Hamas here. But Israel pretends otherwise. Why do they do this? Because they do not want to antagonize and alienate the Muslim world. So if you make it a fight against jihadism, then you're implying that you're fighting Islam. Okay, again, people don't see shades of gray. It's black or white. So if you're fighting jihadism, they think, you're fighting Islam. And so you're automatically alienating the Muslim/Arab world. But in my opinion, this is a big, big mistake. Why? I'm going to tell you why. First of all, it's an abysmal failure, this strategy. Every single Arabic/Muslim country is against Israel on this. Give me one country in which either the government or the people, I'll give you either or, are sympathetic towards Israel. I'll wait. Give me one. The Shia and the Sunni are united on this. Okay? You have, by the way, Iran is a Shiite country and Hamas is Sunni. And so, And so it's crazy. It's not a single Arab country. Even the moderate Arab countries, the ones who made peace deals with Israel, are vehemently and emphatically against Israel on this. And they're assuming, again, impractical positions on this because they want Israel to lay down arms. But what are you going to do? If Israel announces a ceasefire, then Hamas is going to survive, and we're back to square one. So, if you want to see Hamas obliterated, then you must support Israel on this, and you can't keep calling for a ceasefire. So what I'm saying here is that it's a mistake that Israel is not emphasizing the jihadist nature of Hamas because they're not going to alienate the Arab world any more than they're already doing. By emphasizing jihadism, Israel could actually reverse this trend. Why? Because now they're forcing the Muslim world, the Arab world, they're forcing them into self-reflection here, asking themselves, countries and individuals have to ask themselves, okay, Israel is fighting, now it's being framed differently. Israel is fighting jihadism. Okay, it's not terrorism, it's not the tactic. Okay, terrorism implies that it's a fight against over land, right? They want land, Israel wants land, and they're using a terror tactic to try to obtain land. No. This is about jihadism. This is about holy war. It's about a misinterpretation of the true meaning of Islam. So if I'm a moderate Muslim, I gotta ask myself, am I an Islamist? Meaning, am I an extremist? Am I a jihadist? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, I should not be sympathetic to Hamas. So what I'm trying to say here is that we have to get to the root of what really motivates Hamas. Israel needs to talk about this. Stop beating around the bush. Stop being politically correct about calling them terrorists. They're not terrorists. They're Islamists. They're jihadists. That's what motivates them. That's what you're really fighting. The ideology you're fighting is not the ideology simply of, hey, we want the entire land of Israel. It's the ideology driven by a very radical notion and interpretation of Islam, something that's completely out of touch with reality, very uncivilized and un-Western. And so all the Western powers and moderate Arabs, hopefully, they would stop sympathizing with Hamas if you frame it in the right way. Okay, so thank you for watching, and have a good evening.